Hello aspirants, welcome back to Mains Answer Rating Basics program being conducted by Team India4IAS. This is Manjunath Mudol. In this video, we are going to talk about the answer approach to the day 25 question. For day 25, the subject is polity, and within polity, the topic is fundamental rights. So this topic it falls under GS2 paper in UPSC and GS2 paper in KPSC. సో ఈ టాಪಿಕ್ ಅಪ್ಕಮಿಂಗ್ ಮೇನ್ಸ್ UPSC ಮೇನ್ಸ್ 2024 ಮತ್ತು ಅಪ್ಕಮಿಂಗ್ KS ಮೇನ್ಸ್ 2024 ಆರ್ 25. ಸೊ ಪ್ರಿಲಿಮ್ಸ್ ರೀ ಎಕ್ಸಾಮ್ ಆದಮೇಲೆ ಆಗ್ತಕ್ಕಂತಹ KS ಮೇನ್ಸ್ ಏನು ಬರುತ್ತೆ ಆ ಮೇನ್ಸ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಮ್ಸ್ಗೆ ಈ ಟಾಪಿಕ್ ತುಂಬ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್ ಆಗಿರುತ್ತದೆ. ಸಿನ್ಸ್ ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಅ ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಟಿಕ್ ಬೇಸ್ಡ್ ಟಾಪಿಕ್, the question that are being asked initially in the fundamental rights are static. So based on static portion, the question are being asked. So it is important for both KS and UPSC. KS and UPSC. Now we will look into the day 25 question. Day 25 ನ question ನೋಡೋದಾದ್ರೆ explain the concept of fundamental rights. Fundamental rights ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು ಅಂತ explain ಮಾಡಕ್ಕೆ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದಾರೆ. Then discuss their features. Fundamental rights ನ features ನ discuss ಮಾಡಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದಾರೆ. So this is for 10 marks and 150 words. ಈ ಕ್ವಶನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಎರಡು ಪಾರ್ಟ್ ಇದೆ. ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಪಾರ್ಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಫಂಡಮೆಂಟಲ್ ರೈಟ್ಸ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು ಅಂತ ನಾವು ಹೇಳಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ, ಅದನ್ನ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ಲೇನ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ದೆನ್ ಸೆಕೆಂಡ್ ಪಾರ್ಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅದರ ಫೀಚರ್ಸ್ ನ ಬರೀಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಸಿನ್ಸ್ ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಫಾರ್ 10 marks, we should write at least 5 points for the first part and another 5 points for the second part. So 10 marks, 10 points. ಸೊ ಈ 10 ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ಸ್ ಬರೆಯೋದ್ರಿಂದ ನಮಗೇನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ವಿ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಗೆಟ್ ಮ್ಯಾಕ್ಸಿಮಮ್ ಮಾರ್ಕ್ಸ್ ಔಟ್ ಆಫ್ 10 ಮಾರ್ಕ್ಸ್. ಸೊ ಅಟ್ ಲೀಸ್ಟ್ ವಿ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಸ್ಕೋರ್ ಮೋರ್ ದ್ಯಾನ್ 6 to 7 ಮಾರ್ಕ್ಸ್ ಔಟ್ ಆಫ್ 10 ಮಾರ್ಕ್ಸ್. ಸೊ ಈ ಕ್ವಶನ್ಗೆ ಆನ್ಸರ್ ಅಪ್ರೋಚ್ ನೋಡೋದಾದರೆ ಸೊ ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ವಿ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟು ಬಿಗಿನ್ ಅವರ್ ಆನ್ಸರ್ ಬೈ ರೈಟಿಂಗ್ ಆನ್ ಇಂಟ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್. ಸೊ ಇಂಟ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಬರಿಬೋದು, ಸೊ ವಿ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಡಿಫೈನ್ ಫಂಡಮೆಂಟಲ್ ರೈಟ್ಸ್. ಫಂಡಮೆಂಟಲ್ ರೈಟ್ಸ್ನ ಡಿಫೈನ್ ಮಾಡೋದ್ರ ಮುಖಾಂತರ ನಾವು ಇಂಟ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್ನ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು. ಸೊ ಫಂಡಮೆಂಟಲ್ ರೈಟ್ಸ್ ಅಂದರೆ ಏನು? They are the basic human rights guaranteed by the Constitution, that is fundamental law of the land to all its citizens. So ಆ ರೀತಿ ಡಿಫೈನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು. ಆರ್ ಎಲ್ಸ್ ಫಂಡಮೆಂಟಲ್ ರೈಟ್ಸ್ ಆರ್ ಫಂಡಮೆಂಟಲ್ ಫಾರ್ ದ ಎಕ್ಸಿಸ್ಟೆನ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಹ್ಯೂಮನ್ ಇಂಡಿವಿಜುವಲ್ಸ್. ದೇ ಆರ್ ಬೇಸಿಕ್ ಹ್ಯೂಮನ್ ರೈಟ್ಸ್. ಸೊ ಆ ರೀತಿ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ಲೇನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು. ಸೊ ಬೋತ್ ಡೆಫಿನೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಆರ್ ವ್ಯಾಲಿಡ್. ದೆನ್ ವಿ ಶುಡ್ ಆಲ್ಸೋ ಮೆನ್ಷನ್ ದಿ ಕಾನ್ಸ್ಟಿಟ್ಯೂಷನಲ್ ಬೇಸಿಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಫಂಡಮೆಂಟಲ್ ರೈಟ್ಸ್. ಸೊ ಫಂಡಮೆಂಟಲ್ ರೈಟ್ಸ್ ಅಂದರೆ ಏನು ಅಂತ ಡಿಫೈನ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ಮೇಲೆ these rights are enshrined in Part 3 of the Constitution. So as we all know that fundamental rights are enshrined in the Part 3 of the Indian Constitution, and these are considered essential for the development of individuals and the protection of their dignity. So these fundamental rights are very much essential for the development of individuals. ಒಬ್ಬ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿಯ ಅಭಿವೃದ್ಧಿಗಾಗಿ ಏಳಿಗೆಗಾಗಿ ಈ ಫಂಡಮೆಂಟಲ್ ರೈಟ್ಸ್ ತುಂಬ ಅವಶ್ಯಕತೆಯಾಗಿದೆ ಅಂತ ನಾವು ಬರೆದು then we have to move to the main body, that is we have to explain the first part of the question, that is explain the concept of fundamental rights. So coming to the concept of fundamental rights, so in the concept of fundamental rights we should explain that these are the nature of the fundamental rights. So the fundamental rights are inherent to every human being. They are inalienable, and they are enforceable by courts of law. So these are the nature of the fundamental rights. So after explaining the nature, then we should also briefly mention the historical context of the fundamental rights. So like Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Then we should also mention Nehru Report in the year 1930s. It talked about the fundamental rights. So then colonial struggle, we should mention how freedom fighters fought for fundamental rights for all sections of society, that we should mention. Then coming to the objective of the fundamental rights. So while explaining the concept of fundamental rights, we should also briefly mention its objective. So these fundamental rights, they promote individual liberty, Then they also promote equality. Fundamental rights promote equality, and also they ensure dignity of the individuals. So dignity of the individuals. So these are the features or objective of the fundamental rights. After explaining the concept of fundamental rights, so if we write all these points, so this itself explains the concept of fundamental rights. Then we have to move to the answering the features of the fundamental rights, which is second point, which is second part of the question. So coming to the features of fundamental rights are justiciable. That means they can be enforced in the court of law. So citizens, they can approach the Supreme Court under Article 32 and High Court under Article 226 in order to enforce their fundamental rights if they are violated. Then the fundamental rights are non-absolute. So they are not absolute. So they are not absolute and they are subject to reasonable restrictions. There are reasonable restrictions on the fundamental rights. So these restrictions are imposed in the interest of public order, morality, and national security. Then universal application. Universal application means these rights apply universally to all citizens, irrespective of their race, religion, caste, or gender. So that is the meaning of universal application of the fundamental rights. So then the fundamental rights are both act as a negative rights and positive rights. Negative rights means they restrict the action of the state. Few fundamental rights, they restrict the action of the states. Then there are few fundamental rights, they enable the state to take extra measures, legislative and policy measures. So some of the rights they restrict the action of the states, and some of the rights they enable the state to action. So such rights are called as negative and positive rights. Then fundamental rights can be amended, provided the amendment does not violate the basic structure of the constitution. So who can amend the fundamental right? Only parliament can amend the fundamental rights. There is no power for the state legislative assemblies to amend the any part of the constitution. The amendability power rests with solely with the Parliament of India. Then suspension during emergencies. So fundamental rights can be suspended during national emergency. So there are various provisions with respect to suspension of fundamental rights during national emergency. Then fundamental rights, they also provide equality before law and equal protection of law. So this has been mentioned in Article 14 of the Constitution. So these are the few features of the fundamental rights. Apart from these features, there are other features which explain the nature of the fundamental rights. So you can also write those features of the fundamental rights apart from what we have discussed. So this is all about part 1 and part 2 of the question, that is a question based on fundamental rights, that is define the concept of fundamental rights and discuss its features. So it is a easy and straightforward question. So by writing answer for this question, it helps you to prepare films also. Why? Because there are questions that are asked on fundamental rights and features of the fundamental rights. So if you are able to write answer for this question after studying, then you can also address the questions based on fundamental rights just by preparing for the mains. So after writing the part 1 and part 2 of the question, then we have to conclude the answer by writing conclusion. Conclusion ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಬರಿಬೋದು? So we have to highlight the significance of the conclusion. One conclusion is to highlight the significance of the fundamental rights. So what is the significance of fundamental rights? Fundamental rights, they uphold the principles of democracy, they ensure social justice, and they are essential for protecting individual freedoms in India. So ಈ ರೀತಿ ಬರೆದು ನಾವು ಕನ್ಕ್ಲೂಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು. So this is one conclusion, that is writing the significance of the fundamental rights. So what is the significance? They uphold the principles of democracy. They uphold the principles of democracy. Then the second point is they ensure social justice. Social justice. Fundamental rights ensure social justice, and they also protect individual liberty. Individual liberty. So by writing these keywords, we can conclude answer, or else alternatively we can also write dynamic nature of the fundamental rights. So, how these rights evolved through judicial interpretation. For example, Article 21. So, fundamental rights can be enlarged by judicial interpretation to meet the needs of contemporary society. So, that dynamic nature we can write as a conclusion. So, this is about two alternative conclusions for this question. Thank you all for watching day 25 question answer approach. We will meet again in day 26 question answer approach. Till then, happy learning.